Hello and welcome to another amazing episode of You Were Designed for Greatness. And today I am with Christy. Christy and I met, and she has an amazing heart to help people tell their story, which fits so well into You Were Designed for Greatness. So, everybody, join with me and welcome Christy. Christy, say hello.
Well, hello. Hi, Donna. Hi, everybody.
It is so nice to have you here today. Where do you find yourself in the world?
Well, I am in Southwest Florida. I've only been here about 2 months. I've lived my whole life in the Chicagoland area, and I visited last winter and went home and decided I'm done with this cold. So I called the realtor, packed everything up. It was a major endeavor, but I found myself here in July, just in time for the recent hurricane. But I do love it here. It's just a great vibe, great people. I've met so many amazing friends already, and I don't have to deal with cold weather anymore. It's great.
Yes, I have heard people who live in Florida love that. So, yes. So,
Yeah.
tell us about you. What story would you like to share today?
Well, I think I want to kind of share the story of where it all began because I didn't necessarily understand the power of story many years ago.
Hmm.
I had gone through, I mean, we all go through traumatic situations, and I went through a very messy divorce. And at the time, it was all consuming. I didn't really know what was going on. All I knew is my life was upside down. But I was able to come out on the other side of it and create a business that supported my children. And then somebody asked me to share that story. She had saw my journey. She really respected what I had done and wanted me to share my story with her audience in a co-authored book. And of course, my first reaction was, well, who wants to hear my story? But I ended up by saying yes. And the first time somebody reached out to me and told me how my story helped them through their journey, it made it all worthwhile.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I would assume if it was like mine, the first time we really begin to share not just surface stuff, like I got divorced. This happened to me. It's like how it felt
Yes.
that was hard for you.
Yes. Well, it was, I'm an introvert. So the thought of sharing my dirty laundry with people was uncomfortable. But I realized I didn't necessarily have to share the dirty laundry. I could
Mhm.
share parts of my journey that helped people realize that they're not alone, and then also share some wisdom because
Mhm.
I didn't know how to navigate the mess I was in. But I wish I would have been able to read somebody else's stories and get some pointers from them. And so I decided with that first uh, endeavor in sharing my story, I was going to kind of just, highlight the trauma, but more importantly, share some great resources.
Mm.
And that to me was what I felt would do my story justice, and maybe encourage people to to not live in their mess, to get on the other side and just think of a brighter future.
Yeah. So, what are a couple of the tips that you learned going through a very difficult divorce?
Well, I think the tips that I learned going through all of the different traumas in my life and the different stories, my messes that have become messages, is that it's okay for us to have these messy stories, and we really, if we embrace them, it allows us to grow and then be able to write our next better story.
Hmm.
The stories are, our messes are only temporary, and if we look back at some of the things that we've gone through, we came out of them, right? And so when we're in our next mess, if we can recognize that, embrace it, and learn how to grow through it, it allows us to be able to have whatever outcome we want, or pretty close anyways. So
So,
embracing that story. is important.
Yes. So, how do you do that? How do you begin to, when you're in the middle of your pain, embrace your story and begin to look down the road?
Well, I think everybody's different. For me, journaling was a huge part of that
Mhm.
process. And talking to people, but not just anybody, but the right people.
Yes.
Sometimes we talk to people and they are, well, first of all, sometimes we talk to people and they don't want to hear it. They're like,
Mhm.
oh, we don't want to hear that anymore. And then we talk to other people that become cheerleaders for us, but in a bad way. And, they kind of create that negativity cycle. They perpetuate that. And so
Mhm.
that's not a healthy thing for them or us. But if we can align with somebody or a couple people, maybe a pastor, maybe somebody that's a little older and more wiser and that's been through it, and be able to have somebody to talk to that's going to help us through it. I
Mhm.
think that's it's important because we don't have to do things alone. And I think women sometimes feel that we've got to figure it out, but we don't. We don't have to figure it out. And if you reach out and ask for mentorship from somebody who you feel could help you through that journey, most of the time people are honored if you're asking them for the right reason, meaning to grow through it, not just somebody else to bitch about your situation.
Yeah. I don't know. I agree with you. I'm not sure why we see asking for help as a sign of weakness.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's that whole, maybe as a younger girl, the whole superhero syndrome that we've got to put on our superhero cape and go out and save the world. And we, do that with our families and our children. And it's something a lot of women tend to be that,
Mhm.
have that nurture kind of tendencies. However, who's nurturing us? Who's
Right.
helping us? Right? Who's supporting us? And it's not weak to get that support. It's honestly, I think that helps us become more powerful.
Yeah. It actually does. We're so much stronger together when we're in the right together.
Yes.
When we're in the negative spiral, it is very easy to attract people who just want to attend your pity party.
Yes. It's
Um,
so true.
and it is a conscious effort to begin to look for people who are going to bring solutions, not just feel sorry for us, because some of the stuff is really stinky that happens, and really hard. But it doesn't help us. We need somebody to understand, but not allow us to stay there.
Yeah,
Which
absolutely.
is which is the people that's been into my life and the coaches that I've had have made a huge difference. It's one of the keys that I talk about in my Turn Your Baggage into Luggage workshop is to get support, to get help. It actually shows strength, and quit trying to DIY it. Um, you ever create something on Pinterest that didn't look like you thought it was going to look like? And that's kind of what life is like when we're trying to DIY it. It's like, okay, this was supposed to look like a lamb. It doesn't look anything like that, or whatever. And so learning to be able to get support. And in your story, in part of your healing process, was forgiveness part of it?
I think part of my story that it took me a few years to figure out is the ownership piece. I was really comfortable blaming, and not recognizing that I was 50% responsible for the situation
Mm,
in my own way. And so, yeah, at first it wasn't about forgiving myself. It was learning how to be able to forgive that other person and not hang on to that baggage, because if we're angry at somebody else, it doesn't hurt them, it just hurts us.
yep.
And so to be able to let go of that was really freeing for me.
Yep. That has been a huge part for me too. What are some other things you've learned?
Well, so for me, a lot of what I help people do is kind of focus on their story as it relates to their business.
Mhm.
Another thing that I've also helped people do is, and this was something that I didn't really realize at the time, is to be able to share your story to leave a legacy for your future generations. And I was fortunate
Mm.
to have my mom's story in one of our books. And I had somebody interview her, and it was very enlightening for me because I knew my mom from my perspective and from my
Mhm.
years with her, but I didn't really know much about what she shared in her story. And so that has been a huge blessing for me to have that and to be able to, because she has since passed, and it's just an amazing part of what I have of my mother is
Yeah.
that story. And now I know my daughter, my grandchildren, and their generations are going to be able to know my mom, from my perspective as well as from her own.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, being able to, um, because I am sometimes enthralled with the books that tell a story from like 5 or 6 different people's perspective of the
Mhm.
same event and how everyone saw it a little bit different because their experience was different. And learning about our parents is a lot like that. It's looking at it from completely different perspective on what it was like to to go through what our parents went through. So
Yeah, and
that
before us, right? Before us.
yes,
They had a whole life before us.
right.
And it's
Yeah.
kind of mind-boggling, right? Because, they've always been there for us, but, they had years before us, and it's interesting to learn a little bit about that.
Yeah. And they were women and they were husband men and all of the things before they were mom and dad.
Yes,
So
exactly.
so lovely. So if people wanted to learn more about what you do, how would they find you?
Well, so I do have a couple websites, but I think the easiest one to connect with me would be my main website, which is ChristieRuffino.com. The footer of that site does have links to all of the other sites because we do publishing and we have co-authored books. And my mission is to help as many people get their stories out there for whatever their motivation is.
Mhm.
But that ChristieRuffino.com does have a free gift on there, so people can
Yeah,
grab that and get on my mailing list, and just kind of learn a little bit about how I could possibly support them on their mission to get their story out in the world.
great. Thank you so much, Christy, for coming and sharing today. And
Okay.
I have 2 more questions.
Okay.
What is the worst advice you ever received?
Oh my gosh, the worst advice. I think, eh, from my perspective in business, a lot of times I made decisions. Um, I don't know. You know what? I made decisions from a heart perspective and not a head perspective. And then I had one of my mentors kept trying to counsel me to, you've got to run this like a business and look at the numbers. And I'm just like, no, if I do it from a heart perspective, it's all going to work out. So I would say that was probably the best advice I did not listen to. So if I
Mhm.
would have listened to that advice, I would have had a lot less money struggles along the way. It's all worked out in the end, but if I would have listened to some of her advice initially about putting on my business hat
Mhm.
and not always making decisions from my heart.
Awesome. Oh, well, thank you very much for sharing. You kinda answered it. I was gonna ask your best and worst advice, and you kinda answered
Okay,
that all in one.
great. So now you
So,
can ask me what's the worst advice, and I'll probably do the opposite and
yeah.
answer the best advice, but that's
So so you did it great, and thank you again for sharing. We'll put your resources in the show notes, and, keep doing what you're doing and helping people to heal and share their story.
you too, Donna. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for joining me here for another amazing story with Christine. And I would love to help you tell your story and create the story that you have always desired. And in the show notes, there will be a link for you to schedule a virtual coffee or tea, as I will probably be drinking. And let's chat and figure out how to process your story in a way and create the story that you would absolutely love. Again, thank you for listening to this podcast. Please leave a review if you haven't and share it, this episode and others, with people that you know that could benefit from the message that you were designed for greatness, and help them also live vibrantly. Again, thank you for being part of this community. And until next time, live and love vibrantly. Bye for now.